Hey friends, it's me, Dan Phelps, and this is On Looping, my series about the technique, art, and philosophy of looping. I didn't know whether or not to say anything about the current state of the world, knowing that sometime, maybe even years from now, somebody will watch this video, but I figured it was apropos to just say that I hope that you're all doing well here in the Pacific Northwest. We're basically on full-on isolation. And I'm trying to use this time to work on some stuff, find the hidden opportunity in being stuck at home. And I hope that you're keeping sane and healthy as well. With that in mind, I wanted to go back to some basics, some kind of looping 101 concepts in this couple of weeks where you might be also stuck at home with your gear and wanting to sort of bone up or freshen up your looping technique. So this week, we're going to talk about making loops that are in time and that feel good. So without further ado, let's get into it. So you may know me as a guy who does a lot of ambient looping. But rhythmic looping is a big part of my vocabulary as well, and a technique that I've used a lot. And lots of people like to use loopers to create accompaniment or to practice guitar. So I figured it was worthwhile to sort of go back and talk about the techniques and the ability required to make loops that are in time and that feel good. And the first part of that is simply having decent rhythm on the guitar, even when you're not looping. And the ways that you practice that are to play along with songs that you like and really pay attention to settling into the groove. You can work with a metronome, which I have done, but tend to find that that can be a little dry and sterile feeling. Another thing is to use a drum machine, or there's a bazillion loop libraries that great drummers have created, and probably lots of stuff if you just start searching on YouTube. There's probably just isolated drum tracks. I mean, you could do a lot worse than to Google up the isolated drum tracks from some of the Led Zeppelin songs that are out there and play along with John Bonham and just work on your rhythm. Another thing to do would be to record yourself or to film yourself doing this so that you can listen back to it later and really judge whether or not what you're playing is in time and feels good. Oftentimes, when we're in the midst of actually doing the playing, it's hard to hear ourselves accurately, and you kind of have to stand back and go, oh, wow, I was so into it, or I was having such a good time that I wasn't really dialed into whether I was in time or not. And you'll just have to trust me that it's something that if you work on it, it starts to become more second nature, and you begin to just get it into your physiology where you don't have to think or concentrate as much in order to be in time. But until you get to that point, there is a little bit of a mental game happening where you have to sort of say, I'm gonna consciously play further back on the beat than I feel like I need to in order to kind of calibrate and get it to where this rhythm needs to be. So practicing with a drum machine, metronome, or drum grooves is a great way to sort of dial into that. And every guitar player can always stand to increase their knowledge and ability with rhythm. So there's nothing to be lost by working on that. Also, when you're making rhythmic loops, it's going to reveal lots about your sense of rhythm and even just the evenness of your rhythm. Some things that you'll hear guitar players fall into is they'll play a rhythmic loop, and right as it gets to the end, they're sort of thinking about ending the phrase and hitting the foot switch at the same time. They'll rush, and you'll sort of get a little bump in the loop. I'll see if I can kind of recreate that sense, just with like a little rush at the end of the loop, and maybe you can hear what that sounds like. Listening back to the loop will reveal a lot of that kind of stuff to you. So remembering to let the phrase be fully its length before you're hitting the foot switch and not getting kind of nervous and rushing the last beat, that sort of punch of the switch, is a really big deal. Now, the tricky thing about looping as a guitar player is that we kind of have to become drummers at the same time. Improving your personal rhythm is a big deal, but then also being able to operate the looper in time is its own technique. Every looper has kind of a slightly different feel. The foot switch is a little different, and you'll just have to get used to whichever one you're using. I'm using this Chase Bliss blooper. I'm not using any of the kind of funny or interesting or deep features of it. It's just acting as a looper today. But part of the game is essentially being able to tap the switch in time. And one thing that you could do to practice that is, once you're used to playing in time more, you've been working on your rhythm, start practicing tapping your foot in time too. So you'll need to be able to keep time with your foot regardless of what subdivisions or phrases you're playing on the guitar. And a way to practice that is just to play 8th notes or 16th notes and tap out quarter notes with your foot. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just imagine that there's a bass drum that you're playing 4 on the floor, 4 beats per bar, and that stays steady no matter what else you're doing with your hands. And it should get to the point where you can keep that rhythm going and it feels good regardless of what kind of complicated stuff you're playing with your hands. So, once you've got your rhythm in place, you've got your ability to tap. Next comes actually operating the looper. So, with most loopers, you hit the button once to start the loop, and you hit the button again to set the end point of the loop. And these presses have to be in time with what you're playing. So something you can do is just play 8th notes or something super simple. Get that going, maybe settle into a groove within yourself, and then practice making a loop out of that. Not bad, but I can hear how in the middle of that loop I slowed down just a little bit. So using the looper is really illustrative, because being able to hear a couple of bars of your own rhythm over and over again can really show you, for lack of a kinder term, where your deficiencies are and kind of what your bad habits are. So assuming that we've got the basic techniques in place, some ideas for creating interesting rhythmic loops to practice to or write with or just have fun with is it generally helps to think about the loop as being kind of like a drum groove, and to layer in the pieces of a drum groove. Think about how you have hi-hats that tend to be 8th notes or 16th notes, snare drum, it's usually working around that, playing the backbeat or an offset backbeat, and the kick is playing a rhythm that focuses on the 1 or the 1 and the 3. So let's create a rhythmic loop and kind of layer downwards, if you will. We'll create a hi-hat part first, a snare part second, and a bass drum part third. And what I'll do is create the first part, take the looper out of record, and kind of get the right sound and feel for the next layer before I put it into record. And you'll notice when I do a bass drum sound, I might roll off the tone on the guitar so that it's just a little darker. I don't know, let's give it a try. So now I have this basic loop in there. I could play with all kinds of things around that. And what can be fun is to sort of get a couple of layers going and then spend some time improvising and trying different things out over top of it until you find a guitar part or another rhythm that really speaks to you. Now, when you're overdubbing these parts, it's going to be really important that you lock in with the information that's already in the looper pedal. It's important to remember to breathe and kind of sit back and just groove with what you've already created. And one of the cool things about looping yourself this way is that all of the musicians in the band, the different layers of your loop, have the same sense of rhythm as you, because it is all you. So with that in mind, be sure to relax, lay back, and relax as you're laying these other pieces in. And then once you've got something going, it's incredibly fun to experiment with playing different things over top of it, soloing. It's an opportunity to work out harmonic ideas, all that kind of stuff. The looper is a great tool for all kinds of practice. This is how you spend hours and hours of your quarantine time working on your rhythm and ideas. So that's the basics of looping in time and making loops that feel good. I hope that was inspirational for you and that you maybe learned a few ideas, things that you can practice and tricks that you can do to improve your own rhythmic looping. As always, I am Dan, have been, and will continue to be Dan. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, or feel free to send me an email at hello@danphelps.com. If you're interested in taking a one-on-one lesson, you can email me and let's have a dialogue about that. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click the little bell button so that you get notifications when I release new material. And www.danphelps.com. Stay healthy, stay sane, and enjoy your time at home to work on your looping techniques. See you next week.